While Tuesday's loss to UCLA was by no means the end of the world, it did expose some concerns that Purdue fans should be worried about.
You are Locked On Boilermakers, your daily podcast on the Purdue Boilermakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Boilermakers here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, the number one sports podcast network where it's your team every day. I am your host. I am Nick Arvin. I talk Boilermakers every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the only daily Purdue show out there. Also write about Purdue for Purdue 24/7. And we got a fun one headed your way today because I'm going to do the panic meter in today's episode. Certain things about Purdue, certain things that were exposed in terms of concerns. I'm going to go 1 to 10. How concerned am I about where Purdue's at right now? So that'll be the first segment. We'll head on over to how does Purdue bounce back against Illinois? And that's going to be a big game on Saturday. And we'll finish off today's episode talking a little bit of football with this year's final portal update. It'll be a fun one, and I appreciate you guys joining me today for another episode of Locked On Boilermakers. But let's go ahead and jump right into things today. I want to do my panic meter and how this is going to work. It's the first time that I've done this off of any game. So it's going to be 1 to 10, 1 in terms of I'm not really concerned about it. It's something that I believe Matt Painter and this team are going to be able to work out throughout the course of the season. Yes, it may have been an issue on display against UCLA, but not something that I feel like is going to linger throughout the course of the season. Now, 10 obviously means this is a glaring issue, needs to be fixed ASAP, or else Purdue, they're going to keep losing games. So that's the scale we're going to go with. I have 5 things planned that we're going to talk about. If I go on a little bit of a tangent, so be it. But there is a lot to talk about surrounding where Purdue is at right now and some of the issues that have been on display. And overall, I just want to start out with not necessarily issues, but my overall concern level for where Purdue is at right now after that loss. And from 1 to 10, I'm going to have to put Purdue at a 6 right now for my level of concern for the overall team and where they're at. And while I do think it could be a little bit less, because I still have a lot of confidence that this Purdue team is yet to reach their ceiling, that they still have a long way to go in terms of getting to where they want to be, in terms of reaching those expectations that we've had set for them. There have been some games lately, especially after Braden Smith breaks that Big Ten assist record, where the Boilermakers just haven't played 40 minutes of basketball where you put your foot on the pedal and really want to beat your opponent. They haven't pulled away from teams, I guess, the way I would have expected going into this season. And we see that in games like a Penn State or an Iowa, now a UCLA where you do lose. And just, I don't know if it's an effort thing. I don't know if it's a confidence thing or these guys just not playing 44 minutes of basketball, but there are concerns there. And I think that level of energy is something that does need to be addressed. Hopefully, you use this UCLA game as a wake-up call to kind of say, we haven't been playing up to the level. Our mentality hasn't been where it needs to be as of late. Maybe we can do something about it. Maybe we have to do something about it if we want to win the Big Ten this year. And even if we just want to beat Illinois on Saturday, because that's going to be a tough matchup. And we'll get to that in the second segment, but it's ultimately going to determine where Purdue goes this year. So right now, my overall concern for where the team as a whole is at is about a 6. I'm not overly concerned, but there are some glimpses where I just don't know what's going on with these guys right now. So 6 for Purdue in general. And then the next guy is going to be really important for where the Boilermakers are at. And part of the reason why I think we have struggled as of late, and that's been Trey Kaufman-Renn. He has been not the most consistent player. And when you think of Trey Kaufman-Renn, you think of a consistent, intense figure down low in the post that can really make teams pay with his physicality. And to start out the season, I feel like that's exactly what he had been. The rebounding numbers were higher than we've ever seen him. That 2-footed floater that we know he's so good at was falling pretty efficiently. But as of late, we just haven't seen the same Trey Kaufman-Renn. The rebounding numbers have been like 2 rebounds, 3 rebounds. By no means has he played perfect basketball. Against UCLA, he was a little bit better with 10 points. I think he had 5 rebounds in that game. But you lose. And the reason you lose is because Purdue isn't playing through Trey Kaufman-Renn. And whether that is something on him, whether that's just the offense not playing at their top, I truly do believe, and I'll say it over and over again, that this team is at their best when they're getting those points in the paint. And we got outscored in the points in the paint against UCLA. That should never happen. When you have Oscar Clough, when you have Trey Kaufman-Renn, you should consistently win in the paint. And I really do believe, as a senior that's been here for 5 years, a lot of that responsibility does fall on Trey Kaufman-Renn. So I'm going to give him a 7 right now. And I know there's a lot of talk about him playing through an injury. If that is the case, which it has not been confirmed, it explains some of what's been going on. But still, with that, if there is no injury, if it's a confidence thing, whatever is going on with Trey Kaufman-Renn, it is a little bit concerning right now because Purdue is not at their best because they just can't score inside the paint when he's not on. So I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10 for my concern level with Trey Kaufman-Renn. The defense, Purdue's defense, is one where I'm not necessarily as concerned as I've let on in previous shows. In Purdue, they have the 18th ranked defense according to Ken Palman. Yes, it's cliche, but if you have a top 20 defense, top 20 offense, that's usually the key to winning a championship. And while that's not always the case, that Baylor team in 2021 did not have a top 20 defense, you typically do have to have that defense. And Purdue right now, they fall within that standard, but they could fall out of that. My thing, though, with it is that we have good defenders. CJ is one of the best point of attack defenders in the nation. It's just like in the moments when it really matters. And we see it in this game where UCLA running a lot of switches up top with Donovan Dent. CJ Cox would get him at the point of attack. They'd switch off to Bill Doe. And Oscar Clough, he would have to switch on to Bill Doe off the switch when that pass does come in the two-man game. And I don't know if I necessarily like that. Just things like that. And it's not always Clough switching back and forth, but there are just little miscommunications there where your centers have to step up to the three-point line. I don't necessarily love that. And it feels like now that UCLA exposed that, shooting 45% from three-point range, now some other teams may say, we want to run that two-man game. We want to switch Purdue's bigs onto the perimeter. So I'm going to give Purdue a 5 in terms of their defense, my panic meter, because I do think that the defense isn't necessarily the full problem. But what I am concerned about is that maybe UCLA did expose the way to get around Purdue's defense. We saw that at times. The two-man game was big at the end where Bill Doe hits that shot. I don't know, just something I want to throw out there for you guys, but that's not something I'm ultra concerned about right now. Something I am ultra concerned about, and somebody I'm going to give a 9 in terms of the concern levels on my panic meter is Fletcher Loyer. Now, I have been very key, and I've tried to make it very clear that I believe Fletcher Loyer, and not just I believe, it's factual. Fletcher Loyer is an incredibly important part of this team. His ability to make three-point shots and change the momentum in games has been huge for the 4 years he's been here. His ability to be that on-court coach, I don't want to say player coach, but that truly is kind of what he is on the court. That's invaluable to this team. But, big but, when he's not making shots, when on the defensive side of the ball, he's a liability, gets into foul trouble early, you can't keep him on the court. And that's what he's been lately. He hasn't been able to convert on either side of the ball. On the offensive side, the shots are just not falling for him. Every single game, it feels like now, he's having bad shooting performances from three. And then on the defensive side, we see that it's tough for him to guard bigger, faster wings. And that's really been an issue for Purdue. So I'm very concerned about Fletcher Loyer. I don't think that this team reaches their ceiling without Fletcher playing the way that we expect him to play. And he hasn't been up to that standard as of late. So that's something that I am concerned about in terms of Fletcher Loyer. And then the last thing that I'm concerned about is Purdue's front court. And that goes along with Trey Kaufman-Renn, but I want to throw Oscar Clough and I want to throw Daniel Jacobson in there for this one. I have a 7 out of 10 in terms of my concern levels for this front court right now, because back to my point about winning the points in the paint, when you have a Clough, when you have a Jacobson, and when you have a Trey Kaufman-Renn, there's not a team in the nation that should be able to beat you in points in the paint. And we've kind of gotten away from that. And more importantly, we've gotten away from dominating on the glass. To start out this year, Purdue, they were doubling other teams' rebounding numbers. And as of late, yes, the Big Ten Conference, it's a lot tougher to dominate like that on the glass, but we've seen Purdue lose some games in that rebounding margin. We've seen some games where they've either lost on the defensive side, not as many on the offensive side, but win by a tiny margin, and it's not enough to offset the other things that are going wrong for the Boilermakers. So I do think that this front court needs to get it together, and it's a combined deal. Clough plays better when TKR is on, and vice versa. Jacobson is at his best when he can come off the bench and play against TKR, who's really hot, or play with Jack Benner. And just right now, those guys aren't, the chemistry isn't there. And I don't know why. I don't know what the issue is, but hopefully we're able to get it back, because there are some really big games coming up, and no more important than Saturday's matchup with Illinois. It's going to be important that the Boilermakers bounce back on Saturday if they want to keep their hopes of winning this regular season Big Ten title alive. I'll tell you exactly how they do that here next on Locked On Boilermakers. But first, tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Tax season has always been a source of anxiety for me, but that was until I started using TurboTax, because instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can now meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or just connect online. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file it by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. It's time to talk about how Purdue can bounce back after their loss against UCLA. But before we get into that, I do just want to say it's my first season here on Locked On Boilermakers. If you guys haven't seen the channel yet, if you guys are new, or if just haven't hit that subscribe button, I'm on the chase to 1,000 subscribers. That's a huge milestone for me. So if you could hit that subscribe button, it is free and it does mean a lot. And then number two, Locked On Boilermakers and the Locked On Podcast Network are bringing to you guys the Everydayer Club. And I'm sure you've heard of it now, but if you're an everydayer, you make this show go. And that's why we wanted to bring you guys this Everydayer Club, because what it's going to get you is that ad-free Boilermakers content you already love. On top of that, you get exclusive access to the Discord chat, the Locked On Boilermakers Discord chat. It's always a fun time in there with me, all the everydayers. Make sure you get in that. I'll leave that link down below for you guys. But this game against Illinois on Saturday is really going to determine, in my personal opinion, which one of these teams is still in the race for winning the Big Ten regular season championship. And I wanted to make that known after this loss happened on Tuesday against UCLA, that while it is tough and there are some glaring issues that needed to be addressed, there are some concerns there, and you never want to lose, but ultimately that wasn't the important one. The important one is going to be against Illinois on Saturday at Mackey Arena, because these are two teams that are tied for second right now in the Big Ten with Michigan, all three having one loss in the Big Ten. This is largely going to be a game that determines who stays in that A tier and then who falls down to that B tier in the Big Ten in terms of being that contender. I think that Purdue can win this game. And the reason I say that is because, first of all, it's at home in Mackey Arena. Purdue, they're going to have a few days rest, and that's definitely a big factor in this one. But Illinois, they're hot right now. Winners of 8 straight. I don't even know how far back that goes. It may go back into 2025, their win streak, but they are winners of 8 straight. So this is a really red-hot Illinois team right now. But back to the reason why I say that Purdue can win this game is because I do believe that UCLA will be treated as a wake-up call. And we've seen at times this year where Purdue, they will play down to their opponents, but in games where they really need to win, it feels like they answer the call. Like there's something that switches within this team against bad teams or teams that are lesser than on paper compared to an Illinois that's red hot in Big Ten play. It just feels like they're more ready to play. They show up against an Illinois or against, I expect us to see a Michigan, a Indiana, Michigan State. All those big games that Purdue is going to play throughout the course of this year, I just feel like they play a little bit harder. And if they're able to do that against this Illinois team, I do think that they'll have a good chance at victory. We don't have the line out via our friends at FanDuel, but to win this game, and we'll have a full preview out on Friday, so I don't want to give out too much here, and I'm really going to get into scouting this Illinois team tomorrow. But with that being said, this team is a squad where they have 5 double-digit scores to my count. 5 guys: Keaton Wagler, Killen Boswell, Andres Stojakovic, David Murkovic, and of course Tomislav Ivisic. And that's not even counting Zvonimir Ivisic, his brother, who's averaging 8 points, but over 2 blocks per game. This is a tough Illinois team with a ton of experience, a bunch of Euro guys. It's going to be a matchup of 2 of the most experienced teams in college basketball, between Purdue having all the returners, between Illinois having all of these Euro guys. And that's why it's going to be important. It goes back to something I said a little bit earlier in the episode about Purdue's defense. And when you play up against a team like Illinois, where they have 5 different guys in double figures, it's going to be tough to stop all of them. That's just the nature of this Illinois team. They have such a good offense. They actually have the number 1 offense in KenPom right now. Purdue fell down to number 2. But these are 2 teams that are a lot more similar than a lot of people give them credit for in terms of having that experience, in terms of having firepower offenses. So Purdue, they're going to have to address that. And the only way that you stop that isn't cutting off the head of the offense, like we talked about, where you're able to limit the leading scorer and then other guys start to slow down. That's not going to be the case against Illinois. You can't just limit one guy and then stop Illinois' offense because they have so much production. The way that you stop the Illini offense is giving effort on defense, doing the things that are going to show up in those box score margins. That means steals. You have to get steals in this game because that leads to momentum. At home in Mackey Arena, you know how loud it gets. We've all been there. It gets popped when you get steals, when you convert on those opportunities. In a home game like this, stealing the ball, winning that turnover margin is going to be huge, especially when you get yourself into situations where it's like on the offensive side of the ball, you stall out a little bit. The ability to get steals, the ability to turn turnovers into points is something that doesn't get talked about enough. And for this Purdue team, that's really a game changer. And then on the defensive side, you have to get active on the boards. You can't let Illinois get any extra opportunities. With the Ivisic brothers out there, those guys are tall, 7-footers, respectively. They're going to be able to get rebounds. Now, this year, let me check on their rebounding numbers real quick. I didn't figure so. None of those guys are double-digit rebounders like a Trey Kaufman-Renn or an Oscar Clough could be, both about 5 rebounds per game. So that's something that you have to take advantage of. Now, Mirkovic is around 8 rebounds per game. He's probably their leading rebound out there. But that doesn't change the fact that you have got to win this rebounding margin if you want to beat Illinois. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Don't win the rebounding margin. I don't know if you win this game. So that's going to be huge. And then the final thing, it really comes down to the front court. Now, Braden Smith has been excellent, and we saw him carry this Purdue team to wins over the course of the last 2 weeks. However, that's not a sustainable recipe for success. And yes, I love Braden Smith. He's excellent, should be an All-American, probably will be an All-American this year. But with that being said, when he has a night like he did against UCLA, where he wasn't necessarily bad, but he didn't put up a 20-point, 10-assist, double-double, in games like that, which are going to happen, it's so important, maybe more important than anything else for this year's team, that front court steps up around him. And in a game like this against Illinois, where the Illini have more depth than probably any team you face off against this year, the front court is going to be key to a Purdue victory. I want this team scoring 40 points in the paint. If they can get there, I think that Purdue has a great shot at bouncing back. And ultimately, if they do beat Illinois, we're not going to be sitting here talking about the UCLA loss that happened earlier in the week. We're going to be talking about the Illinois win. Purdue has the opportunity to right their wrongs on Saturday with a huge victory over Illinois, but it's going to take a lot of effort that we haven't seen as of late. It's going to take that front court just stepping up around Braden Smith. It's going to take steals, winning the turnover margin, and most importantly, you have to win those rebounding battles. If you're able to do that, you beat Illinois. Things are all right in the world, and we're on the right track. We'll see. Full preview out tomorrow, like I said, so make sure you join us once again with that. I'll have Sonny of Locked On Illini on the show. Make sure you join us for that. But in the final segment today, I want to give our final transfer portal update, everything that's happened as the portal has finally shut down for Purdue. We'll get into that. Stick with us here next on Locked On Boilermakers. Final segment of today's Locked On Boilermakers, and I want to switch things up a little bit as we end off today's episode and give you guys a little bit of a final transfer portal overview for everything that went down for Purdue over the portal. I know that a lot of you guys that watch for basketball aren't necessarily the biggest Purdue football fans right now because the state of the program has been a little bit rough, but I do think it's important that we document everything that's happened. And I want to give this final overview of all the guys that have left, everyone that's come in, kind of where we're at right now. And if you guys haven't been here for these transfer portal updates, something I do want to mention is that probably the most important spot for what Purdue needed was going to be on the defensive side of the ball. Last year, that defense was terrible, just flat out terrible. And then Mike Shire, he leaves defensive coordinator. You reach back over the aisle to the Ryan Walters administration and pick up Kevin Kane as your defensive coordinator, making it very important that you get new guys on the defensive side, not just new guys, but guys that play really good football, guys on the defensive side that are tough, that can get out of their breaks quick, that can get off that line, try to get to the quarterback in terms of that front seven, because we just haven't had that pressure as of late. Get some run protection in there and then really fix that secondary. Those were the biggest concerns for Purdue when we went into that portal, and a lot of that was addressed. So before we talk about who Purdue has picked up, the final guys that the Boilermakers have picked up, I want to talk about some of the key guys that did leave. I won't go too in depth because we have a lot of players to talk about in just about 10 minutes, but we'll get into everybody that I could possibly get into. Purdue's notable losses really come down to tight end Rico Walker. He leaves, still doesn't have a home quite yet. That's an interesting loss in terms of just trying to get another tight end. We got that guy who we'll talk about. Braden Joyner, who is going to be a starter on the O-line, leaves to Florida State. You addressed that. John Randall, gone to Utah State, probably wouldn't have played, but who knows. Alex Sanford, a linebacker, gone to Pitt. D'Amico Kennedy, who's going to be good on that defensive line, gone now to Louisville. Jerron Thomas, solid running back, but probably wouldn't have played, gone now to Minnesota. Hank Purvis, who was a starter on the offensive line, now gone to South Carolina as well. Carson Dean, a linebacker, still doesn't have a home. Armand Branch is at USF, Southern Florida. Jamarion Harkless, who I thought was going to be really good on the defensive line, is now gone to Kentucky. Malachi Singleton found a home at Appalachian State. And the rest of the guys aren't too notable, but Jaheim Merriweather, he doesn't have a home yet. Tyrell Green also doesn't have a home. The guys that withdrawn their transfers, and these were big when they happened, because initially out of the secondary, Damon Marable, Smiley Bradford, two of the best pieces that we had left in that secondary, they withdraw their transfers, elect to stay at Purdue when Kevin Kane comes over. Winston Berglund as well, a solid linebacker. How much he plays with the new additions, I'm not totally sure. But with that being said, you have a look at everyone that is left. Let's get into who is coming to Purdue. And honestly, I'm pretty impressed. Now, this is just step one. Step two is going to be Barry Odom getting these guys together and trying to form an actual team, because I feel like last year we were in the same situation. Now, obviously, Barry wasn't able to get the amount of quality guys he was able to get this year, but still with that, brings in a ton of transfers, but there just was no cohesion. It wasn't a group with full of chemistry like we've seen with other teams that really utilize the transfer portal. So that's going to be step two this year for Purdue. I want to make sure I get that out in front. But there were some solid additions and guys that I want to talk about. First of all, filling up that defensive line was going to be really big. And I think this is the last guy that Purdue actually brought in, but it's Elo Modozi. He's an edge rusher out of Georgia. And this is a huge one. Getting a Georgia edge rusher. Didn't play a ton, but did get a few stats. I think it was 17 tackles, a few sacks while he was at Georgia. Wasn't a starter, but still did see some time on the field. He's a 4-star, 9.2 rating on 24/7 Sports. Our best transfer pickup by far. And this is going to be a guy that can absolutely wreak havoc on a Boilermakers front seven. I'm so excited for Modozi. he's going to be the best recruit that we got. And we got a Georgia edge, baby. So that's huge for what we're trying to do here. Don Saunders in the secondary is going to be big at corner over from Utah. That was a solid addition from a Power 4 school. I don't know quite yet what Saunders will be, what his role is, but that's a big one. Kurt Neal is another guy on that defensive line from Illinois, and you'll start to see we picked up a few different players from Illinois, and Kurt Neal is going to be a great one in my personal opinion. Can really fill up the interior defensive line, maybe play a little bit of edge. I don't know quite yet, but at 6 foot, 310 pounds, I think he's going to be a guy that can really fill up the inside of that defensive line. Stop the run. We'll have to see. In terms of another secondary piece that Purdue was able to bring up, and I know I'm kind of throwing these fast at you, but we got Jaden Mangham out of Michigan, and Jaden Mangham is one of my favorite additions right next to Mendoza out of Georgia, because I think Mangham is going to be a star. He was at Michigan State, transfers over to Michigan, now at Purdue, real ball hawk at safety, can get downhill quick, but also has very good field awareness. He can go side to side, can pick off balls. He can really do it all from the safety position. We got a real star, in my opinion, in Jaden Mangham. On the defensive side, we're going to stay with defense, and then we'll go over to the offensive side to end off today's episode. We pick up Wisdom Sims, who got a few really good reps at NC Central, played good ball over there last year, 6'4", 315, huge body on the defensive line. Hudson Miller comes over from Toledo at the linebacker position. He'll be solid, but the linebacker I'm really excited about is Anthony Specca out of Penn State. I think that Specca could be a dog for this Purdue defense. We're still going to have to see, and that's the most important thing that I can throw out there. As good as these guys look and as high prestige schools as they come from, it is important that we realize we're really not going to know what these guys are until they actually step on the field and until they play within the identity that Barry Odom is trying to set. But I do think that Anthony Specca is going to be an incredible player this year for Purdue. And then to add on to those linebackers, to add on to the Illinois additions, we get JoJo Hayden from just a state over, another Big Ten conference rival that joins the Boilermakers. Hayden, a solid linebacker, 6'2", 245 pounds. I think he's going to be a starter as well. Him and Anthony Specca in that linebacker core, that's just a match made in heaven, in my personal opinion. I just can't wait to see how this team unfolds going into next year. And I am starting to get a little bit excited, and that's not something I necessarily thought I would feel. But some of these transfer pickups have just been extremely, extremely impressive. Didn't know that Barry was going to be able to bring in some of these guys, but he did a really good job with it. He also brings in John Slaughter, safety out of Colorado, Rodney Laura, defensive lineman out of UCF, D. Newsome out of Samford. He's a corner. Justin Denson out of Michigan State. There's a lot of guys to talk about. Mr. Clark out of FIU. I love that name there. Another safety. And then Keyshawn Burgess out of Virginia Tech. That's about it on the defensive side of the ball. The guys that I really want to mention, though, are Jaden Mangham, those linebackers, and JoJo Hayden, Anthony Specca, and, of course, our Georgia defensive edge in Elo Modonzi. It's going to be a solid defense this year, I think. But on the offensive side, what Barry Odom was able to do was he was able to rebuild that offensive line with guys like Hank Purvis leaving, with guys like Braden Joyner leaving, and he was able to add in another running back to try to build up that identity around Ryan Brown, where you can bring in that running attack. Just let Ryan Brown manage these games going into the future. So allow him to develop, not force him to do too much. We saw last year a lot of interceptions. I think that'll go down with the increased size on the offensive line and the addition of Jared Gibson in the backfield. And Jatavius Shivers is going to be a big piece on the offensive line. Huge offensive tackle, 6'6", 325 pounds out of South Carolina. That's a huge pickup for Purdue, and a guy I think is probably going to be Ryan Brown's blind side blocker. We also get Nuku Mafi out of OSU. Similar player, an offensive tackle, 6'4", 325 pounds. Something I do want to throw out there is also Joey Tenona elects to stay at Purdue. So that's another huge piece that's going to be here on that offensive line. He is one of our best offensive linemen. So you get a South Carolina guy, Oklahoma State guy, keep Joey Tenona. You got your two offensive tackles now. But in terms of the interior O-lineman, Barry went to the conference. He went to USC, and I mean Southern California, for this one, and picked up two guys. Makai Sinai is the one, played 5 games, starter last year at USC. He's going to be that interior guard. And then Mekhi Bonilopes, who is 6'2", 310 pounds. Mekhi's teammate at USC. Both of these guys could be solid guards at Purdue, and I'm really excited about them. So overall, Purdue does a great job. Barry Odom does a great job rebuilding this offensive line. The last piece I want to talk about is Boaz Stanley from South Carolina. So for USC, between Southern California and South Carolina representatives now on this offensive line, Boaz Stanley, solid size, 6'4", 310 pounds. Don't know if he'll be a guard, a center. I really don't know how he'll slot up right now, but we pretty well got this offensive line covered in a lot of size, a lot of talent out of Power 4 schools. And add in Jarrett Gibson, who got a little bit lost in that Texas backfield, but still a lot of talent, top 100 recruit. Coming out of high school, added in Antonio Harris, who's staying next year. You can start to see why it's hard to get excited about Purdue because of the past failures. But with some of the additions this year, it could be a solid football team. How good? I don't know. Don't know if I'm going to predict them to reach a bowl game again this year. But there are a lot better pieces, a lot more size than there was last year. So that's at least the positive. And I just appreciate you guys joining me again for today's episode of Locked On Boilermakers. That's all I got for you guys today. Once again, I'll leave that Everydayer Club link down below for you. If you guys can join that, it's an amazing time in there. Really exciting. Don't have to, but if you guys want to, if that's something you guys are interested in, that exclusive Discord, it's amazing. So make sure you get in there. And then we'll have that Illinois preview coming out tomorrow with Sonny Verma of Locked On Illini. Make sure you join us again for that one. But that's all I got once again. So you guys have a great Thursday. And as always, boiler up, hammer down.